Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Book Corner, and let us continue with where we last left off. This is going to be my reading for the first year, The Black Mage, Book 1, Part 2. Okay, this is where we ended off last. I'd been on the run for an hour when a loud crash of hooves pierced the silence from somewhere behind the trees. Pulling at the rein sharply, I steered my horse into a hard turn. "Right, is that you?" Thank the gods, I thought. I'd been searching for him all night. "Alex. Lost my tail a couple miles back." He sidled closer. "Where's your two?" "Occupied." That was certainly one way of putting it. They won't be searching for us tonight. It was too dark to see Alex's face, but I knew he was grinning. "What did you do?" I swallowed, unwilling to tell my brother the story while we were still in the middle of the woods. "Let's get out of here first, and I'll tell you everything in the morning." Wouldn't be safe until we were through the pass. There was still my brother's tail searching the hills. Sooner or later they would turn back. "Fine, but let's take the rest at a walk. My horse needs a break and I can barely see in this awful darkness." Alex snorted. "I don't know about you, but I've almost fallen off twice tonight." I knew better than the common. My overprotective brother would emerge as soon as he saw me in the light. I was in no mood for one of his rants, and I didn't want to give him a reason to go charging back after the men. I wanted to get to the academy as quickly as possible and leave this nightmare behind. My brother let me lead. I had a better head for directions than he, and the two of us quietly found our way back to the main road after another hour of silent climbing. We finally left the canopy of trees and continued the remainder of our trek across open plains. The moon's soft glow and the occasional glitter of starlight lit the way. Fortunately for me, Alex was too exhausted to take in any abnormality of my appearance. Instead, the two of us remained silently alert, using the remainder of our energy to listen for others' approach. Several hours later, just as the sun peeked through the towering crags off in the distance, we came across a welcome sight. A large, homely inn stood out from the road with the scent of hot, buttery eggs and sausage wafting through a wide pair of windows at its base. Alex took off with a yelp, and I chased after my brother, eyes glued to the vision ahead. All I wanted to do was sleep. That was clearly the last thing my brother had in mind. How? Alex's face colored with each mounting word. How could you not tell me the moment you found me? As soon as we turned over our mounts, Alex had finally noticed my appearance. All enthusiasm had faded in the light of the many scratches, bruises, and blood mottling my skin. And then he noticed my hand. "Rye?" I hid my arm behind my back. Angry blisters marred my fingers and palms in unsightly patches of glistening red, and the pain was worse. It was more important to get to safety first. My apology was weak at best. "Safety?" Alex snapped. "Don't use that combat nonsense with me, Raya. And what happened? I thought you said—" "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make you upset." Alex made a face. "I believe I have a right to know what happened to my own sister." The last thing I needed was his rage after he heard the tale. "Not now. Tomorrow, please, when we are both feeling better." Alex glowered. "One day of rest, and then you will tell me what happened." I raised a brow. "Keep acting like that and people will start to think you're the hot-headed one." The two of us entered the inn, and while I inspected the grounds, Alex went ahead and ordered a room and a bath. Then, eyeing a loitering maidservant with a wink, he added on a list of common salves to be brought. The girl scurried off, blushing at my brother and glaring at me. I knew what she was thinking. Women all took my brother the same. Alex and I might have been the same age, but that was where the similarities began and ended. I was a bit stubborn, a little too quick to settle my fights with the fist. My brother was assured and quick to smile. He never got into fights. He was too busy flirting with girls and charming our parents. It wasn't that I was a brat. I just didn't have the patience that came with my brother's confidence. People liked him and tolerated me. I suspected it was also because I had what my parents joked was a big mouth. Alex was also a good 3 inches taller than me, with shoulders I envied. He barely even tried, and muscles sprouted on his arms and legs like a plant. Meanwhile, my build wouldn't change. I was slim and gangly, and months of hard training back home had never changed it. I wanted to hate my brother, but apparently I was also under his spell. Alex had everything. Our parents' soft brown locks and warm blue eyes that made most girls forget how easy he flirted around town. Well, that and his humor. My eyes were blue too, but they were so light it was more common to think of them as gray than anything else. Gray. Take into account my quick temper, and it was no wonder people did not take to me the same. In a lot of ways, I was more like my younger brother Derek. Alex took after our parents. Alex motioned for me to wash my cuts and then gave me a warning smile after I'd finished. You are not going to like this next part. I nodded absent-mindedly. I was more than used to him tending my wounds. My brother pressed 2 fingers to my palm. There was a moment of awareness, like needles pricking against skin, and then my pain flared, like hot embers working inside my flesh. It seemed to go on for ages, and I bit my cheek. A mage of combat wouldn't show weakness, so neither would I. The ache built to an unbearable point, and then it suddenly ebbed, a chill sweeping out and covering my flesh. Alex kept the pressure steady for another minute, and then he got up to grab the tray the maid had delivered. My brother filled a warm glass of water and mixed it with salt. He poured the mixture over my skin. It wasn't a pleasant sensation, but more tolerable than the last. He dabbed the inflamed flesh with a cold poultice a few seconds longer, and then spread a bit of honey over the top, wrapping my hand in a thin cloth when he was satisfied. Thank you. Alex shook his head. It's a shame this couldn't have happened after we started at the academy. If it had, I'd be able to do a lot more than this. You are still going to have to let the rest of these cuts heal naturally. In brother's speech, don't do anything else to hurt yourself before we reach the school. I waved his apology away. I just feel lucky you have magic. In 2 days' time, I'm going to be the biggest fraud in the history of that school. Alex cited the familiar argument. You have something, right? You just haven't found it. Everyone knows twins always share the gift. The scrolls always said magic was rare, not hereditary, and emerged in adolescence. Who's to say our shared birth played in part since blood didn't? Perhaps other twins had been the exception and we were the norm. I wasn't even sure the last pair of twins had attended the Academy of Magic. It wasn't like we were a common occurrence. But who was to say the council scrolls were talking about us? For all we know, they could have been referring to identical twins. I fingered my red locks, a sharp contrast to the muted brown of my brother. We couldn't be more different there. Alex gave my knee a reassuring pat. Gods help us, right? Even if you do have magic, it isn't as if we have a real shot. I sighed. That much was true, at least. Most applicants failed their trial year. We were just 2 low-born kids without any formal training. Mark my words, he added. This time next year, we'll be applying to the cavalry. I knew my brother was right, but I hoped more than anything he was wrong. The next day came too soon. I had barely shut my eyes before Alex was shaking me awake with the reminder that we still had 60 miles of riding left and 2 days to do it. And if we fall behind now, we'll miss the admission period. I glared at my brother. Not funny, I'd said. The very same thing 2 mornings before, which had led us to that godforsaken overpass and the bandits in the first place. Alex grinned in reply. Grumbling, I dressed and walked the length of the room, gathering the rest of the supplies until we were ready to leave. Alex handed me my breakfast as we exited the inn, the same stale bread as every meal before. I eyed it unhappily. If I ever saw a piece of rye again, it would be too soon. After we tipped the stable boy for our horse's return, the 2 of us set to checking the fit of our straps and loading the saddlebags. Alex finished much sooner than me. He volunteered to assist, but I refused. Warriors deal with pain every day, and now that the worst of mine was gone, I was determined to do the same. Exhaling loudly, my brother mounted his charge, muttering about mule-headed sisters who were too stubborn for their own good. I finished a couple minutes later, and then swung myself into the saddle, wincing. My body was still sore, but for the most part, a full night's rest had done me good. My ribs were only a little bit tender, and most of my wounds had closed. Even the burn on my hand, while still a terrible shade of pink, didn't sting. It did itch, unfortunately, but I had enough sense not to scratch it. I'd learned that lesson plenty of times before. Alex moaned as we started out into the main road. What I wouldn't give for some creamed porridge. My tongue salivated, or a honey bun. Alex's stomach roared loudly in accord. The bread hadn't done very much to shake our hunger. After the room, we hadn't had much coin left for the inn's meals. The first thing I'm going to ask the masters to teach me, my brother declared, is how to conjure food. Good food. Oh boy. We both knew the academy only taught warcasting. The masters would never waste any of the faction's lessons on something so silly. Magic was too precious. If they taught us food anything, it'd be the easiest fare for an army, hardly the tastiest. I look forward to hearing their response. Alex chucked the last bit of his roll at me. It was rock hard. Laughing, I managed to catch it and toss it into Forest Beyond. So, Alex said, are you ready to tell me what happened? I wasn't, but I was going to anyway. I at least knew the truth. Alex had only my injuries and his wild imagination to explain them. If our roles had been reversed, I would have insisted as much. I proceeded to tell him everything. When I was finished, Alex snarled, that cowardly whelp. He deserved much worse than what he got. I cringed. That memory was anything but pleasant. It was also a nagging in the back of my mind. Something about the turn of events didn't make sense, even now retelling them. How exactly had Jared caught fire? We'd been scuffling close to the fire, but had he really been so senseless to roll his entire body into the pit? He'd been on top of me, and then he'd disappeared. In the heat of the moment, I hadn't bothered to question it, but now I wondered, was there another explanation for what I'd seen? I still felt like something was missing. My hand stilled on the reins. Was it magic? Raya? I glanced at my brother. We'd been riding in silence for the last couple minutes, and now he was watching me with a curious expression. I stared at the grassy plains ahead of us, wondering if I should say my last thoughts out loud. It seemed too much to hope. There'd been a couple times since Alex discovered his powers where I'd thought, but each time I'd been wrong, and the disappointment had been crippling. No, it was better left unsaid. But Alex knew me too well. You think you lit the man on fire with magic, don't you? Was it really so obvious? I flushed. I know how it sounds, but it makes more sense than anything else. Tell me I'm wrong. I didn't want him to. I wanted magic to be the answer, but I'd been wrong so many times. He was quiet. I knew Alex was caught between believing in his sister and facing our pattern in the past. I played with the reins in my lap. The man didn't roll into the fire, and he wasn't close enough for the pit for the flames to reach him. Perhaps you misjudged the distance. My brother's reply was gentle. The man could have fallen in while you were dazed. No, but he was too far away. My words were desperate, and I could hear the plea in the back of my throat. Believe me. Did anything feel different? He pressed. Were you unusually hot or lightheaded? Did you think of fire or all the traditional symptoms of magic? My hand burned, and just about everything hurt. I wasn't lightheaded exactly, but my head did really ache afterward. I paused, and no, I was too angry and afraid to be thinking of anything except what was happening. Alex frowned. That doesn't sound like a casting, or at least what it's like for me. An idea hit me. Do you think my pain released the magic? Alex appeared thoughtful. Maybe. But then how is it that it only worked once? He hurt you several times before it occurred. And how many times have you injured yourself sparring in Demsha with your friends? That was true, but then nothing about magic made sense. Maybe there was an answer and I would find it at the academy. Groping around in my bags, I eagerly pulled out my father's hunting knife. Raya, my brother yelled, what are you? Ignoring Alex's cry of alarm, I dug the blade into the center of my palm, reopening freshly sealed wounds as blood dripped down past my wrist. At the same time, I observed a yellowish-green mass that clung to a nearby tree. The moss looked like a perfect target, a furry patch of flammable tufts. I increased the pressure of the blade. Almost immediately, the moss began to shrivel and smoke. Alex! My brother's jaw dropped as he followed my gaze. I continued to add pressure, hardly conscious of the pain as flames sprouted on the moss. Look, I have magic! Yeah, she was actually right. Who would have thought? My voice was raspy and hoarse. I wanted to scream, but I was too afraid it would break the concentration of power on the tree. Breaking free of his initial shock, my twin rode over and snatched the knife away with a huff. Alex! The moss crumbled to the ground in a withered heap, the flames gone. My brother gave me a dark look, brandishing the knife. You shouldn't have to maim yourself to cast Raya. Clearly any brotherly elation was lost in the wake of my blood. He was right, of course. I wasn't even sure I could. My mind was racing. Now that I knew what it felt like, could I do it again, without cutting myself? Staring determinedly at a second tree, I willed my magic to take flight naturally without inflicting pain. Nothing. I squinted harder, ignoring the throbbing of my hand and the pounding of my head as I ogled a yellow-green mound on the trunk. Every thought, every part of me strained as I attempted to project my magic onto the nearby moss. Still, it remained unchanged. I tried again and again and again. Eventually, I passed a whole forest of moss-lined trees without so much as the slightest hint of fire, not even smoke. By the time we made camp for the evening, I was frustrated and coarse. What is wrong with me? I tore into my dried jerky with vengeance. Why can't things ever come easy like they do for you? Sorry, hang on. Alex wasn't rising to my bait. You'd make a great soldier or knight, but you want to be a mage. You picked an uphill road from the start. I made a frustrated sound. Everyone knows that mages are the best. They had the power, the status, rooms in the king's palace, and all the coin they'd ever need. A knight was a lofty goal, but how could I explain that it wasn't enough? There was this driving pull, and it had been part of me for years, ever since that day 6 years ago when a patrol from the Crown's army regiment stopped by our village on their way to the palace in Devon. There had been a swarm of soldiers and knights to captivate my brothers and the village boys, but the person who caught my eye was the sole combat mage avoiding attention in the back of their squad. I had seen the way the others deferred to her. She'd had their respect, and she didn't have to lift the heaviest sword or flex her muscles to do it. She just was. It was like that with all magical factions, but there was something special about combat. That was the day I'd started to dream of carrying that kind of power and respect. It was intoxicating and I couldn't let it go. You chose the hardest path because it was hard. I chose restoration because I wanted to heal people. I want to help them too. You want to be a war mage to save people and be the hero they remember. Healers and alchemists do the same without the fancy title. Who didn't want to be the hero? Everyone knew the ones who chose combat were a little power-hungry and mad, but we were also the ones who shaped a war. I wasn't going to apologize for wanting more. Vain? Perhaps. Ambitious? Definitely. But that's the kind of mage Gerard needed. You didn't become the most powerful country from shaking hands. None of that will matter if I have to bloody myself every time I need to cast. Imagine that. A mage who had to slit her wrist just to fight a duel. I'd be dead in a matter of weeks. My brother reached out to take my hand. I'm sure the masters will be able to show you how to use your power without hurting yourself. Well, here's hoping. I hope so. If not, I was in for a very troubling year. Alex grinned, and once you've mastered it, you can make some normal friends, not the power-hungry ones like yourself. Ha, you think you're so hilarious. You're laughing because it's true. Now, let's see, how far have I gotten? Okay, I think I'm going to end this part off here. I'll get to work on editing it. I'm going to have to edit it out anyway. And I will see you guys next time.